Flossing of the sciatic nerve is really useful if you are bothered by sciatica, which is a bothered sciatic nerve because of something, either a muscle or a disc pinches the nerve, and well, by doing so your brain kind of thinks that the entire nerve is bothered. So the school book example would be a disc protruding for some reason, either a little or a total collapse of the disc, takes up the space the nerve ought to have, pinched nerve, and there's pain, tingling, numbness. In the school book example, it's generally a lot of pain in the back of the leg all the way down to the foot. So we'd like to do something about the disc, fine, sure, but to just alleviate some of the pain, we could floss the nerve to decrease the sensitivity the nerve, well, has. So to do so, find a sitting position. The point is to stretch the nerve in one direction first, and then in the other, kind of like when you floss. So nerve from the head, we get down here to flex the spine, shin towards chest, flexion of the hip, get up here, and this would be a stretch of the nerve as much as you possibly can. Get rid of the tension in one end, and the actual flossing would be here. So more stretch, less stretch, less stretch, and more stretch. As you go, you'll generally be able to get further and further. When you start out doing this, you might very well be able to, well, almost get down here if you're really bad. And as soon as you get up here, you're starting to get, well, all of those symptoms. And if so, that's where you start. Less stretch, more stretch, more and less, and then just progress as you go. The point is to get less symptoms afterwards. If you do too much, you might very well annoy the nerve more and you'll get more symptoms, and that's not the point. Do enough to get less symptoms and get a good feel for what volume you need to do so. The pain in the leg usually tells you really well when you're doing too much, when you stretch it too far. So don't brute force that part. Go just as far as you can and do what's tolerable and, well, perhaps not pleasant, but pleasant enough. And get a feel for how far can I go, how many do I need to do, 15, 20, 30 perhaps, and then relax for an hour or two, see how did it go, how much better did things get, and then back to it. The same concept is applicable to the nerves in the front, but we'll have to change how to stretch the nerve. So instead of flexion of the hip, we find the extension, and instead of extending the knee, we find the flexion of the knee. The same concept with the neck and the flossing, and the method is the same. So stretch by looking down, stretch by the hip by causing an extension, and as I progress and as I experience less symptoms, I can add the flexion of the knee. These movements are practically the same as stretching the quads. So if you'd like a more convenient method to use in everyday life, find a stretch for the quads and just add the neck element. Find a decent stretch in the nerve with the quad stretch so you don't really annoy it a lot. There's a tiny little stretch so you're on the edge, and with just the movement of the neck you ought to be able to reach the same results.